You've written a book, A Foreign Policy of Freedom. What would be the primary foreign policy tenets in a Paul administration?
Well, I would take very seriously the advice of the founders, and I would follow the Constitution. The founders said, stay out of entangling alliances, mind our own business, but have a strong national defense. And also, the Constitution gives no authority to a president or for Congress to get involved in these affairs and to become a world policeman. So the advice was good. The Constitution limits our jurisdiction in these affairs. We should provide for a national defense. Ironically, because we carelessly get involved in all these foreign entanglements, it diminishes our national defense. I think, you know, the military right now is in bad shape. The equipment's in bad shape. They're demoralized. They don't have enough troops. They're overextending their tours. They're making them go back in less than a year's rest. The guard units have been used overseas. At the same time, they're not available for use here in this country. Our borders are being neglected. At the same time, they're taking up border guards from our own borders and paying them more money to go to Iraq and train border guards over there. I mean, if there's ever been anything turned on its head, it's this. We're over there worrying about everybody else's borders, spending all this money, losing lives, at the same time diminishing our national defense and ignoring our borders.
So you mentioned their borders. So basically, there are a lot of American people today who are upset about the present immigration policy in this country.
Sure.
So what would your immigration policy be?
Well, I think we should avoid having illegal immigration. You know, that should go without saying. But now instead we reward illegal immigration.
So what would you do with the people who are already here?
I'd send them back. You know, there's just no way that you should reward anybody that came here illegally, because it is a reward. So we have done too much to subsidize illegal immigration. I don't believe in birthright citizenship just because they walk across the border and have a baby. I don't think the 14th Amendment was meant to do that. But I think it should be clarified either by law or change in the Constitution. I don't think we should ever give amnesty. And we should not ever require states to provide free medical care and free education for illegal aliens. That only encourages the illegals to come. This does not preclude legal work programs, because people from Mexico coming back and forth and working, we shouldn't be afraid of that, and we shouldn't be afraid of immigration, but it has to be legal. The way now, it's totally out of control. And matter of fact, our welfare state works against us here, because some of our people don't work too hard because you know, they can go on welfare, and then there's a need for jobs. And
so how would you protect the borders of the United States?
Well, I think we need to double, triple, or quadruple border guards. I think that's the main thing, and to get rid of the incentives. I believe that if you don't get rid of the incentives, that you can build a lot of fences and put up a lot of border guards, and it probably won't work because the incentives will be too great, you know, just to go around the obstacles. But they have to know that they're not going to get a free ride. And this came about by a court ruling that said that, you know, under affirmative action, that you couldn't deny this free care. But if they knew they wouldn't get this, I think they would lose their enthusiasm for coming. But it is a major problem, and we should be paying a lot more attention and more resources directed in that manner, rather than worrying about solving all the problems of the world, which we tend to mess up more than help.
Well, speaking of incentives, the drug dealers and heroin users and so forth seem to have great incentives to peddle illegal drugs. What would you do as president to stop this drug trade, and how would you win the war on drugs?
Well, I don't think there's a perfect victory in the war on drugs. There's always going to be somebody that's going to abuse it. I mean, alcohol is legal, and there's a lot of abuse of alcohol. Alcohol is probably a lot more damaging than the illegal drugs right now. If some of these hard drugs were legalized today, does that mean you and I are going to be more tempted to take them? It's an insane argument. And there are some powers to be who like drugs to be illegal, including the drug dealers, because there's so much money in it, and governments use this as a way of raising funds. But it hasn't helped at all. The drug problem is every bit as bad as it was 30 years ago. The modern war on drugs started in the early 70s, and it's probably over $300 billion we have spent. And the laws are absolutely insane. You know, if you're an adult and you're using illegal drugs and you've never committed a violent act, but you've been arrested 3 times on that, you have a mandatory life sentence, and you never can get out, and you've never committed a crime of violence. At the same time, we have people who have been arrested under those conditions who are using medical marijuana. They have been sick with cancer and AIDS, and they were getting some relief. And we've literally taken sick people, and the federal government goes in and arrests these people and put them in prison. So there's a few violations there. One, the drug war isn't an answer to addiction. It's a medical problem. In the other sense, it's a violation of the state's rights to legalize some of these things. You know, in some states, it's legal to use medical marijuana, which is very, very modest legalization, so to speak. And yet the federal government comes in and overrules it and says to the states, you can't do this, and they override all the laws in the state. But I just think the American people see through this, that this isn't working. Almost every family's been touched some way or the other, you know, with people have been using drugs and the way they're treated. You know, some people who commit murder and rape get out of prison sooner than you get out of prison if you've used drugs illegally and never committed, you know, a violent crime. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. And like you implied in the question, prices are probably about 1,000 times higher than they would be if they were just flat out legal or made available to people. I, as a physician, if a patient comes to me and I give them excessive amount of narcotics because I know they're an addict and they're not ready, they're not determined to quit, but I don't want them going out and shooting and killing somebody, I can go to prison. I mean, that's how crazy. I'm not even allowed to make a medical judgment on that because the government comes in and rules over this. But I think there's a lot of people waking up to this and realizing the war on drugs has not been successful.
You know, Congressman Paul, with all of the United States spread thin throughout the world with its troops and diplomatic services, money's kind of short. We're rolling up huge deficits. What would you do as president to control those deficits?
Well, that's a pretty important subject, and it involves the understanding of what our people want from our government. Today, unfortunately, in Washington, the prevailing attitude is that the people expect to be taken care of from cradle to grave, and we're expected to be the policemen of the world, and that deficits don't matter. And we've been introduced to that notion, and many conservatives, many liberals buy that idea. And we've been getting a free ride, but unfortunately the burden's going to fall on the next generation, and it's already starting to fall on the younger people now because their taxes are going to be high and it's harder for them to save money. But because we are endlessly spending overseas, and because entitlements continue to skyrocket, even with the conservative Republicans in charge, you know, entitlements are still up there. Remember the old days when Ronald Reagan wanted to get rid of the Department of Education? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, now, under this administration, we doubled the size of the Department of Education. We gave the prescription drug program. I mean, we had massive regulations of business. So we haven't acted very conservatively. But the spending continues. We tax too much already. If you add up all the taxes that the people pay, you know, local and federal, we're probably working half the time for the government. Mm-hmm. And I think people are getting sick and tired of it. And then we don't have enough money, so we go out and borrow. But we don't have anybody saving any money in this country because they're living beyond their means, and we're a consumer nation. And we've been conditioned to do that. So what do we have to do? We have to borrow the money from China. We can't even fight the war in Iraq without borrowing billions of dollars from China and Japan and Saudi Arabia. Of course, people should be reminded that 15 out of 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia, mm-hmm. yet they're still, you know, our best friend. Mm-hmm. But then there's still not enough money. So we resort to printing the money to finance this runaway government. And that, of course, comes through this Federal Reserve System that I've always been opposed to. And I think it only encourages big government because conservatives spend too much on one area, liberals spend too much in another area, they get together, the Fed will take care of it.